Hey y'all, and welcome to Politibrawl. My name is Brian, and this CNN panelist is pleasantly shocked to see that Donald Trump is more presidential on the world stage than our own Joe Biden. Of course, Scott Jennings isn't shocked by this, and he hits the nail right on the head for all CNN to hear and understand. Let's dive in.
I thought he was very measured, and I thought his overall interview, by the way, was really good. The tone was good. He's clearly focused on the future, not on going back into the past. That was a direct quote from him. He's focused on immigration. He's focused on bringing down prices in energy exploration and energy production in the United States. These are all the priorities that he ran on. So I think his projection of that about how his focus and his attention is going to be spent was good. On immigration specifically, I thought we got a very measured, reasonable, and realistic Donald Trump. He knows it's a problem he's got to solve. He knows he needs to work with Democrats, especially in the Senate, to get something done. And he knows the American people are tired of inaction on this. And so I thought he hit all the right notes. I mean, he talked to Kristen Welker for over an hour. We only got to see a portion of it. But I watched the entire thing. I thought from soup to nuts, Donald Trump had a really good weekend, both from his trip to Europe and then also on this NBC interview. If he can sort of maintain this kind of problem-solving posture, he's going to get off to a really good start in January.
I do want to touch on what you bring up really quickly before we go. This weekend trip where we saw him in France, meeting with Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, meeting with President Zelensky from Ukraine. Scott, I know I talked to you the day it was happening, but it was striking because he is not the sitting president. He is the president-elect right now, and yet here he was meeting with these world leaders and really looking quite presidential over the weekend.
Yeah, the country of the United States has moved on. The world has moved on. Donald Trump doesn't take office until January, but you can see the rest of the world is already treating him like he is the power center of the United States. And so I'm glad he went. This cathedral reopening is a huge deal to so many people around the world, Catholics, Christians. It's a historical moment. It was also a chance for him to talk to some of our biggest allies, people he's going to have to be coordinating with on some of these problems that Joe Biden is leaving behind. Donald Trump is hitting the ground running. I mean, he's already out doing the things that we need him to do to get the country back on track. So between his interview with Meet the Press, you can see here that Donald Trump is not going to have a passive presidency. This is going to be an active start to this presidency. And the rest of the world responds to leadership. We've not had a strong president. We have one now. Everybody knows it.
Attaboy, Scott. And you know what? Congratulations, CNN. Congratulations to you for saying something positive about Donald Trump. I know that's very, very difficult for y'all, but you know what? Good for you. You're starting to learn. This is the step to recover me. This is the step to recovery. I am glad you are on this journey. Now, granted, they're doing that because it's the money, but you know what? I don't care what the reason is. As long as they're being brought into the light, as long as they're being brought into the truth, that's better than what they have been doing. You hear that, Ted Turner? There's still hope for you to make it right with Jane Fonda. Okay, sorry for that little tangent. But as a Georgia boy who knows what Ted Turner has done for us, yeah, just because he made the Braves a national product doesn't mean I can forgive him for his other ridiculousness. Come on, Captain Planet, really? And see, that's why I don't like CNN. I'm not a Ted Turner fan, and other than Ted's Montana Grill, I'm sorry, his products are a little bit lacking. I mean, no one talks about TBS today now, do they? And that's because cable is dying. Now, CNN has realized this conundrum, and they also realize that they've been relying on rich white liberals in the suburbs, in their ivory tower little gated communities away from the ills of the inner city and the actual problems. But you know what? They can't do that anymore. They can't do that anymore because they just watched 4 years of Joe Biden. And I'll get to foreign policy in just a moment, but they saw him just flail about in his last 2 years. I mean, ever since he had that first fall off his bike, I think was it New Jersey? Or was that near Rehoboam Beach in Delaware? Either way, it was on that part of the Atlantic seaboard, and he never recovered. He never recovered his image after that. And of course, the whole world got to see him in that debate against Trump, and that's when they couldn't lie about it anymore. They had no choice but to tell the truth. And so they had to move on to Kamala Harris, but y'all know that history. So we need to focus then on the foreign policy aspect. And I've got to start with this. When I was briefly a never Trumper back in 2015, early 2016, As a matter of fact, all the way up until late October, I was intending to not vote for him. I was intending to just leave it blank and go down ballot. But I've mentioned that here before, and one of my biggest gripes was I thought this guy was going to have his lunch money eaten at the world stage. It turned out he's been the best foreign policy president that we've had since Nixon. And arguably, the fallout from Nixon was he got China out of the Russian sphere and he brought it into the world stage. But he made it into this disgusting behemoth that it's now become because Chinese politics has been messed up for forever. And the mandate of heaven, oh boy, if you know what that is, China's in for an interesting time in the next decade. Let me just put it to you that way. So, Donald Trump has then been better than Nixon on the foreign policy stage. Perhaps better than Eisenhower. He got a few things wrong. Let's not talk about Reagan's history. So, you know what? He might have been the best foreign policy president that we've had. I've got some gripes with FDR and how he managed the world stage during World War II. So yeah, he might have been the best in 100 years. And compare that to Joe Biden, who wasn't just status quo. Joe Biden did something that I think is morally reprehensible. And that is forcing the world to play to America's tune, but play to its pre-Trump tune. The Barack Obama world stage was not a good place to play. It simply was not. The world was already tired of George W. Bush and his almost failures of foreign policy. He got a few things right, and he got a whole lot of bigger things wrong. And the world was tired of that kind of leadership. And the world actually secretly liked Bush because behind closed doors you could work with him. Compare that to Barack Obama, where they loved him in front of everyone and then tried to play hardball with him and lost. That should have been good for Barack Obama, but that made the world a little bit bitter. And then Trump comes onto the stage in 2016, and all of a sudden the world goes, "We don't know how to trust you." And Donald Trump goes, "That's okay. We're going to make great deals. Don't worry. Everyone's going to come out a winner. You're going to love it." And that's what happened. That is almost exactly what happened. The world got new trade deals. The EU started realizing, oh, Trump's got a point. Maybe it's time to start paying our fair share. But under Joe Biden, something weird happened. After the failure of leaving Afghanistan, after that just monumental failure, the world realized that America wasn't as strong as they thought. And so Joe Biden was forced to play more hardball. And that's not good on the world stage, because when you play hardball after looking soft, the world knows it can take something from you. The world knows that there's something that they don't have to respect about you. The world knows you screwed up, and now they can take you for a little extra. And Joe Biden then got even tougher and tougher. And if you want a biblical example, right after the passing of King Solomon, the Israelites branched off into two kingdoms, the kingdom of Judah and the kingdom of Israel, all because the young prince decided to be even tougher than his father when it came to taxation. You don't tell the world, who's been saying, okay, we've been having a problem with the old leadership, new leadership, you got to change something. And also, on a side note, this is a big reason for so many conflicts on the world stage, because when there's a new king that comes into town, and if he doesn't make a few concessions and reforms here and there, things are going to go south real fast. And Donald Trump does not represent that strong-armed, hardball tactics. It's the, I like this idea, I like this deal, what do you think? You want something, I want something, let's make a deal. And he literally wrote a book called The Art of the Deal. And finally, I'm going to end with this. If you notice something about these images, where he seems like he is getting along with the world leaders like Macron, where it seems like German and British leaders are starting to treat him with a little bit more respect, that's because they know that they have been saber rattling for the past 2 years because of the conflict in Ukraine. And hopefully that they can get something out of this with their rhetoric and can finally start scaling down while making good deals with the United States, maybe even a peace deal with Russia. And if all hopes go according to plan, we can start ending more conflicts once again in the Middle East. Funny, we didn't have them under the Trump administration. And hopefully, these are the big two things I'd love to see. That China says, you know what, we're going to recognize Taiwan independence. Taiwan's going to have to give us some concessions. and North Korea finally starts scaling back. Now, I don't ever expect that one. And Taiwan might be a pipe dream, but that's in the realm of possibility now that Trump is there. Because that's the new status quo. That is the new deals that are on the table. Anything is possible in the positive light because Trump is not going to strong arm other nations without backing it up properly. He is going to give them deals that's going to make everyone a little bit more happy. And maybe, just maybe, we're going to start seeing some rogue nations coming into the fold and having current nations stop the ridiculous saber rattling. And I know I've ended with one thing. Let me just remind you briefly that both France and Great Britain, as well as Germany, have all had major public announcements saying that they're looking into what a conflict with Russia would look like. That is a saber rattling of Europe that we haven't heard since the Berlin Wall fell. Okay? That is how bad things could get. I would much rather have a deal maker like Trump than the man who's tried to strong arm nations after realizing that he screwed up into basically, leeching off of all of our money and buying our weapons in order to perpetuate more chaos. What do you think is better? The deal that Trump offers or the chaos of the Biden administration? Even CNN had to recognize that in this instance. And that's why I've been harping on this so much. That's why I think this is so important. The upcoming Trump administration is going to be, in my opinion, a major win on the foreign policy side of our debates and of our issues. I think that we're going to start seeing some major world progress. Folks, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here in Political Brawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. And until then, y'all have a good one.